to this space of Animaná and Hecho por Nosotros. This is a side event at the ECOSOC Partnership Forum. This is a side event co-hosted by Stanford Angel and Entrepreneurs. Here we have Radhika Shah, who supports and helps the work of Hecho por Nosotros. So very welcome to Radhika. Well, this is a great opportunity to give one more step around collaboration. Here we are talking about collaboration, and I think we have to connect with humility, maybe. Is that a human value that will let us go to collaboration, co-creation?
Welcome to today's dialogue on reimagining collaboration and co-creation, embracing regenerative models and digital innovation to advance systemic change for sustainability and equity. I would like to welcome each of you on behalf of Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs to this ECOSOC Partnership Forum UN side event. Happy to collaborate with Hecho por Nosotros on this event. I am Radhika Shah, co-president of Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, a community of 3,000 plus alumni, students, and faculty come together to advance tech innovation and entrepreneurship. Engaging with local communities enables us to ensure solutions are contextually relevant and empower some of the world's most climate vulnerable regions with the tools and knowledge to adapt and thrive in the face of accelerating environmental threats. It is imperative in this moment that local grassroots communities, rural and indigenous peoples are front and center, not just as beneficiaries, but leaders, co-designers of the systems change happening and needed in our world. Hecho por Nosotros and Adriana's inspiring leadership is one such example of reimagining collaboration in this age of digital metamorphosis, bringing systemic change anchored in agency and co-creation, circular regenerative innovation, and equitable digital access.
To be here. It's an honor to be with my collaborator and friend of 30 years, Adriana. So let's start. One of the things we've seen come out of the internet world, in this collaborative world, is an assault on truth. About 10 years ago, our late night comedian, Stephen Colbert, coined the term truthiness. That truth doesn't matter anymore. Now we're talking about truthiness, which is sort of a concept in the neighborhood of truth. Something may have an element of truthiness. Of course, Camila, you're a journalist, and to journalists, there's no such thing as truthiness. There's only the truth. Kellyanne Conway, who was running policy for Trump in his first administration, said, certainly you may have facts, but I have alternative facts. Of course, there's no such thing as alternative facts. And our great sociologist, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, said, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but not their own set of facts. And that's what we're operating. That's what the internet has done today. It's really eradicated truth. Now, for that to happen, it means traditional media has to collapse, and largely, not entirely, largely it has. The economic model for much professional journalism has been eroded. Group M, the biggest media buyer in the world, estimates that from 2000, the beginning of the internet for consumers, to 2016, 60% of advertising has been sucked out of television, radio, newspapers, and magazines and gone to two places, Facebook and Google. Social media is changing the entire landscape. And let me show, here's where I'd like to show one slide. Yeah, this is a pretty remarkable slide. Adriana will recognize this. 2000, about 10% believe nothing online. That's now climbed to about 22%. And to collaborate, we have to have truth. We have to have facts. We have to be able to compare things.
a lot of the potential of the private sector has not been fully appreciated and fully realized, particularly in the context of sustainable development and managing the impacts of climate change, which are things that I work on the most. I also believe that many climate solutions are often more financially viable than is sometimes assumed. Two main ways to address climate challenges. There's what's sometimes called mitigation, which is reducing the emissions that cause the climate problem in the first place. And then there's adaptation, which is helping society to minimize and cope with the impacts of a changing climate. And those are both critical, but there has not been enough investment and efforts across society in adaptation and resilience because I would argue there's been an underappreciation of how large and how urgent the need is to address those. Many people believe that these climate challenges are far in the future, although I think that's it's increasingly obvious day by day as we see the disruptions in our natural world and extreme weather that we've never had before, that many of these climate impacts are already here.
Has really not been able to service a huge number of people across the globe, right? I mean, think about it. There's still billions of people who are unbanked, right? And we know for a fact that crypto blockchain is offering solutions which are cheaper, which are faster, which do serve these unbanked. Let's talk about climate resilience. And I refer again to gatekeepers who really decide which projects will be funded or which won't be funded, because those projects are really ascribing to certain standards that these gatekeepers have set. And today we have digital measurement, reporting, and verification systems in place, which are again based on chain, which are based on blockchain, which can really replace these gatekeepers, certify, verify the impact is happening where it's supposed to happen, can be relied upon really to generate and also, for example, extinguish such credits really to drive finance to projects which are creating impact at the front lines.
So ultimately, when we think of globalized solutions, we might very easily come to a conclusion that we need to find solutions, scale up solutions, and use the same approaches that we've used for globalization. And I think that is a really big pitfall that we have in front of us, and we have to be really careful in not falling into that pitfall. Because as we scale up challenges and scale up solutions, we start just copying and pasting. We start homogenizing, solutions in a world that thrives on diversity. So we really need to focus and ask ourselves if we understand diversity and how diversity really is expressed in nature as an enabler of potentials. As diversity is what allows us to be resilient, to innovate, to evolve. We need to start acting by regionally, start building local economies, not based on monetary capital, but also on natural capital, social capital, cultural capital, spiritual capital within the bioregions to create vitality. And if all bioregions of the world increase their vitality and their capacity to create conditions for life.
But there are two words that are important in your question, which is one, systemic, and the other one is sustainability. What do these words really mean? Sustainability is something that I think is not achievable anymore. We have mortgaged the possibility for future generations to have actually a decent life in the future unless we revert the damage. The concept is almost 40 years old, and it was never achieved by society. The other question is, are universities preparing the professionals to face the current challenges, not even the future challenges? I mean, if we look at the top universities and the top rankings, are the criteria for these rankings adequate? Where is our guiding compass for bringing sustainability towards regeneration in the academia? There is a very simple one, the safe operating space for humanity. Here we have soil is missing, here spirituality is missing, here politics is missing. but it still gives us guidance. And we know since the first publication in 2009, biodiversity loss, fertilizer use, and now more recently pesticides, chemicals, and plastics are what are taking us from our safe operating space for humanity. So if we look at this and we look at the disappearance of nature globally and in Latin America, we've lost 95% of the abundance of biodiversity. That means ecosystems are collapsing already. So we do not have another 30 years to react. And the world is concentrated on CO2 emissions. Everybody's talking about reducing CO2 emissions. Carbon is the best input we have to revert planetary collapse. It's what feeds plants. It's what feeds the soil. It can be stored back into the soil if we do regeneration. So we really need to look at where the most important things are. And none of what we're looking around the planet has been caused by future emissions. So we need to reinvent ourselves. And I used to think we needed a revolution. Now I think we need an evolution. So we need to go from the typical ego society, transition through the eco-society, and go to seva. So humanity in service of life. This is what regeneration is about. And the way to do it is using nature's wisdom, learning from nature. So we need to link everybody back to nature. And Luis talked very nicely about that. And this is my model of regenerative development. So at a bioregional level, we need to apply these 6 dimensions. And the connection between Mother Earth and spirituality is fundamental in both directions. So the question, how do universities bring regeneration to their programs? Their programs have to be in service of life. And we should measure that in service of life. Why not with happiness and hope instead of GDP?